Okay, welcome to HQ Connect. And today we absolutely have the pleasure of Michelle McQuaid joining us. Michelle's in the HQ hot seat, and we're going to be finding out about, ask Michelle about strengths and what do we know about strengths and how do we tap into those and use those to build high quality connections. So first of all, welcome Michelle, great to have you here.
Great to be with you.
Okay, I'm going to dive straight into the questions. So this is pretty short, sharp and sweet. And I guess the first one, Michelle, when you are with clients and you have to explain high quality connections to them, what's the way that you explain them in an easy way that they can understand and also for them to see the value of them in the workplace?
Yeah, mostly I'll just talk about a high quality connection as a genuine connection between two people working together. It's really that simple in my mind, often because I find time and busyness is the most common stumbling block to any behaviour change when it comes to our well-being. I will often add into that description that they can so often be micro moments of genuine connection, but it's showing up, it's being present, it's really seeing the people in front of us and valuing them for what we see.
Great. And where do people see the value in the workplace? How do you sell that part to them? Because we all say, well, that's great. It's great to have high quality connections, great to connect with people, but, we're in a business here.
I often take a slightly deficit approach, I hate to say, to that side of the equation, which is, if you think about what creates the most work for you, what slows you down most often at work, most people will point immediately to relationships with somebody where things just don't go as smoothly as they could, or they feel like they need to put in a lot of extra effort, or the relationship went off the rails somewhere and it took a lot to win back trust. And so, while I think most of us go to work each day thinking our primary job is to get through all those tasks that are on the to-do list so we can meet all those goals that have been set for us, what we often miss as we look at that is how important relationships are for us in all of that. And so I often say to people, your number one task each day when you get to work should be to intentionally spend a bit of time investing in your relationships so it doesn't become that nice to do when we can fit it in and we feel on top of everything. It becomes the have to do. And I think there's so much beautiful research we can point to around how those connections speed trust between us, build better relationships, help us get better performance outcomes when we prioritise them.
Fantastic, that's great. I'm going to dive straight into the second question. And what you do many great things, Michelle, and you're a power horse, and I love you. But one of the things you do it really well, and which I've really enjoyed, particularly in your book, is using your strengths at work to be more engaged, more energised, and just feel good and flourish well at work and be successful. So how could we tap into our strengths to build better connections with others?
I think my big aha, having taught strengths to people in all sorts of different work settings at this point, is that for some of this comes really naturally. If you're high in the strengths of kindness and love, social intelligence, humour in particular, then you're probably already using your strengths to connect well with people every day. And for those people, I find it absolutely helps to be aware that that's part of what's fueling their joy for work. But I find they don't really have to get too intentional about tapping those strengths further generally. Where perhaps they might be struggling is if they're really not having a great time at work, realising that opportunities for that are missing. But where I find it makes a huge difference for the rest of us, particularly those like me who perhaps are more introverted than extroverted in our relationships, is understanding how do I use strengths like, curiosity, perseverance, gratitude, turning it outwards towards others, not just inward towards my gratitude for my own life, self-regulation, all these other amazing strengths we have if we're using tools like the VIA survey, for example, to make relationships more comfortable. And this was definitely a big aha for me as a natural introvert who has a reasonably healthy dose of social anxiety. Walking into rooms to teach and to coach, although that was what my heart wanted to be doing, it was really hard to get out of my own way in terms of the fear and self-doubt a lot of the times when I started doing that work. What made a massive difference was understanding how I could use strengths like curiosity to get interested in people, not just tasks or studies or academic things I might learn, but to turn that strength towards my connections with others, towards creating more of those high quality connections as I went about my day. And I found actually it's really easy to get endlessly curious about what did people like about their jobs, what were they hoping, what were they struggling with, you know, what lit them up, what did they like to connect with other people around. And it enabled me to show up in those relationships in ways that were authentic and energizing and enjoyable for me and for the person on the other side. Whereas up until that point, if I went in intentionally trying to be more socially intelligent or more approachable or more warm for people, because those aren't naturally my highest strengths where I'm going to feel more engaged and energized and authentic, it was hard work. You know, it was a bit like trying to write in your non-dominant hand. You know, after an hour of being socially intelligent like that, I'd have to go home and have a nap. And it probably didn't feel very good for the poor person I was practicing on, because it was pretty clunky and clumsy, and there perhaps wasn't very much high quality about those connections, if that makes sense. So I think because of my own personal experience, but because of what I find for many people in workplaces who aren't always high in kindness and love and social intelligence, some of those ones that help us more, understanding how these strengths that aren't always obviously turned towards our relationships with each other can be used to create more of those moments of high quality connections and to create ones that are engaging and energizing for us, so we want to keep investing in them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think one of the things also for me is sometimes people give you feedback about why they come to you or why they connect well with you or what they appreciate about you. And that's usually sometimes a bit of a tip about your strengths too. And certainly I'm I use curiosity as well, and I certainly don't use humour. I don't use it very well. I'm just not that type of zesty type of humorous person either. But one of the things that people say to me is, I come to you sometimes for your perspective. You really sort of have that wise head on you sometimes. And I think, yeah, that's my strength, isn't it? And I'm obviously using that, and people appreciate that. And that's very authentic and easy for me to use. So sometimes maybe it's not so hard to use them, but just being aware when's the right time to use them and where do people appreciate it, trying to get that feedback from others.
And I think connecting the dots between these are strengths I've got and this is how they could play in this context. Because again, it would never really, I knew that I was pretty curious about things, but I'd never connected that to getting curious about people necessarily. I was great at getting curious about how the brain worked or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when I managed to connect, here's a strength and here's a context I could use it in that would help me for this outcome that I recognize is actually pretty important to do what I want to do in the world. That for me was the magic moment, if you like, around how do our strengths enable these high quality connections when those things may not come as naturally to some of us.
Great. Well, thank you. Now, that's probably already lots of tips, because my next question is, and maybe just one. So what would be your one top tip to play to your strengths and make high quality connections a reality at work?
Yeah, look, I think I'll give you two quick ones. One I've touched on, which is prioritising our relationships as the first thing that we should do each day when we get to work. Again, being a not so people-focused person, very task-dominated person naturally, if people aren't on that list, it's easy for me to miss them off. So again, for some of us that comes naturally. The first thing we want to do when we get to work is reach out to others. But if that's not you, then actually making the relationship one of those tasks right at the top of the list each day, I think it's really worth doing. The other one that I've found really helpful the last couple of years I've played with is fusing my strengths with Adam Grant's suggestion around doing a 5-minute favour each day for somebody. And so, one of the ways I make that task the first thing I do each day is think about, well, what strengths do I have today that I could use to do a 5-minute favour to help somebody else in my network? And again, as Adam suggests, that creates this beautiful ripple effect across our relationships that, again, I think if we're going to be otherish givers, successful givers, not the burnt out givers that Adam's research suggests, we want to play to the strengths that we have rather than trying to do everything for everyone all the time. So for me, this was kind of this beautiful fusion of a number of our positive psychology tools or practices, ways of thinking about how can I get the high quality connection by using my strengths and being a more effective giver in this, one beautiful 5-minute power shot. So that is definitely one I found has made a big difference for me and many others.
Wow, that's great. It's real sort of boost of
it is supercharged.
Taking a big sort of vitamin or something, like, woo, you've got
it.
I'm having fun. So just the last question then, because that's what it's all about. Let's play, and I love how in Jane's work, one of the pathways into building high quality connections is to play. Is the role that play has in building high quality connections, and there's many different ways that we can play in our workplaces. What's one way that you bring social play into your workplace that energises you and others that you work with?
Yeah, so I'm a huge advocate for play. I think it's one of the best ways we learn, and we all need more of it. For me, I find one of the things often in workplaces is people mistakenly think that this social play, again, it's a nice to have. It's something we'll fit in when we're not so busy. And one of the things I'm always encouraging leaders, likewise, if your task each day is connect with others, then one of the things as leaders we need to be doing is also prioritising, giving permission, making space for social play. I think the hard part about that at work in group settings is we've all often been part of an experience where we were forced into social play with our colleagues that did not feel authentic or good at all, right? It's this really delicate balance when it comes to social play with others. And so I think as leaders, I'm always encouraging people, make the space, give the permission, but share around the opportunity for what that play looks like, because I do think different people enjoy different forms of play. For me personally, I have a virtual team, and while many of us are located in the same city, some of us are in other states as well. For those of us in the same city, we don't work together every day in the office. We're on Slack, so we use an instant messaging thing. One of the ways that we play together, we have a Monday morning meeting at the start of the week, and we use little giffies, little movie giffies that you can get online, and we always post those up first thing in the morning about how we're feeling for the week. And it's great because we don't have the benefit of seeing, oh, Marcy's looking a bit flat today, she's had a hard weekend or something. So it's a really beautiful way for us to see each other. But it's also really playful because we're always looking for like funny off the wall sort of things. The other thing, we will use those sorts of things and emojis and that as we're talking during the day or that. So we know someone's a bit flat or they're struggling a bit, up will pop this kind of crazy little movie clip or image of that, and you can't so hard not to laugh at them. So these are ways we've found in a virtual environment we can create space for social play when we're not physically together all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's so relevant. So many of us do have virtual connections, and we have to continue to build them in a virtual way. So to do it in an authentic, playful, fun way, how creative can we get? And I agree. So many other people have other great ideas. It's not just one person's idea. It's amazing what other people can bring to the party.
Well, you get to discover such amazing things about people, I think, when you open up that opportunity and you give them that permission. It's like, I would never have known that about you, but I'm so happy that I do now. And I think, again, it builds that authenticity, those heartfelt connections with each other, because we're willing to be more vulnerable and more seen by each other.
Yeah, that's great. Well, look, Michelle, thanks so much for your time today. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks for being our guest. It's been great to connect and continue to build a high quality connection with you. So thank you for your time. I'll put in the notes where people can get in touch with you. But Michelle, do you want to just let people know how to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So michellemcquaid.com, head over to that website. And I have to say, there's a ton of free content up there around this. So one of my other pieces, again, a bit of the flip side of high quality connections, but I find whenever I talk about it at the moment in organisations, everyone sits up and starts taking notes, is of course the wonderful work by Christine Parath around incivility and what's missing when we don't have high quality connections. So, again, you'll find tons of podcasts, articles, tip sheets, lots of free resources there around ways to build high quality connections and to use your strengths at work.
Fantastic. And yep, it's great. Lots of wonderful resources, and really appreciate that you share so much with us, Michelle. So thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.
And really great to talk to you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.